Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. We've got a few more people we're going to admit right now. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Katie Knutson. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Storyboard concert. The idea here is that the Nest board never really gets to have a public face during the conferences, during the events, and a lot of people don't actually know who they are. So some of the Nest board members are going to be sharing some stories with you today, because almost everybody on the Nest board is actually a storyteller. We don't have everybody here tonight, but we do have a good representation of at least a few people. And each storyteller is going to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about what they do on the board, and then share a story with you that they've picked for tonight. We will have 4 storytellers, and we'll wrap up at the end of the night. So without further ado, please welcome Barbara, who will tell you a little bit more about her. But you do need to unmute, Barbara.
Okay. My name is Barbara Alaprantis, and when people ask me to tell them about myself, I said, just Google me. I've been telling stories for many, many years. I worked in a school for the deaf. I learned sign language on the job. I studied with the National Theater of the Deaf. And so I have all these little tricks and techniques for telling stories. But tonight, I'm going to tell you one of my favorite stories. I say that about all my stories. They're all my favorites. And of course, because I speak with my hands, and this is a story I tell in sign language, I was told when I was working in the School for the Deaf that I could not tell this story to a deaf child. They would not understand the metaphor. I said, excuse me? I was challenged. So the children came. They were 6 years old, 7, and they were sitting in a little semicircle, and I told them this story. Once upon a time, there was a little boy. The little boy lived on a farm, and he was always complaining to his mother that he had nothing to do. Ma, she said, what? I feel so bored. She said, you're bored? Well, why don't you read a book? Read a book again? Fine. He took a book off the shelf, put it in the palm of his hand, looked at the end, the last pages, then went to the beginning and read it like this. Ma, I read a book. Now what am I going to do? And this time, instead of signing bored, he went like this. She said, well, why don't you stand on your head? Stand on my head? Okay. So imagine these are his legs, and he's tried for a little while, really hard, put his tongue out because it helps to concentrate, and he went like this. Ma, what? I'm still bored. She thought, I have a good idea. It's a beautiful day. Why don't you go for a walk on the farm? A walk? You want me to go for a walk? But wait, I have an idea. Go for a walk. And I want you to, I think she was making it up as she was thinking, I know. Look for a little red house. What? Yes. Look for a little red house with no windows, no door, and a star inside. You want me to look for a little red house with no window, no door, and a star inside? Okay, fine. He opened the door. He said, "See you later, Ma." And he went out and he started walking and looking. But then he remembered she said it was little, so maybe he should look on the floor. So he went on his knees and sees he was crawling around looking. And then but there was the farmer standing there looking up at the clouds. And the farmer said, "What are you doing down there, kid?" He said, "Well, I'm looking for a little red house with no windows, no door, and a star inside." The farmer's mouth fell open. "What? Whoa, I never saw such a thing." And the farmer walked off in a huff. The little boy continued searching. And he met his little friend, the girl next door. He said, "Excuse me." She said, "What are you doing down there? Well, maybe you can help me." And you know what he said, looking for a little red house, no windows, no door, and a star inside. The little girl said, "I'm sorry." And she went off. Well, the boy was so frustrated. He said, "Oh, forget it. Such a silly idea. I'm going to go back home." And suddenly, there's always a suddenly, the wind started to blow from out of nowhere. And the wind was blowing and he was trying to stand and he almost fell over when something fell right out of the sky and dropped at his feet. Whoa! He reached down. He picked it up. He looked at it very carefully. It was the color red. Oh, there were no windows. There certainly were no doors. It's sort of like a little chimney on top. Maybe, was there a star inside? Well, he ran all the way home, opened the door, and he yelled, "Ma, Ma, look, is this the little red house? Look, there's no windows, there's no door. Ma, is there a star inside?" And his mother said, "I don't know. Let's look." So on that day, the mother decided, rather than cut it down this way, the way she usually did when she put peanut butter on it for an after school snack, this time she took the apple and she took a knife and cut it right down the side. And as the little boy heard the crunch, oh, you can't hear it, but I can. And I smell it. The smell of a crunchy apple. The mother's mouth dropped open. She held it up to her son. Look, there it was, a star inside the apple. Friends, I have told this story, this apple story, for more than 30 years. I have cut hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of apples. Granny Smith's, Gaia, the red, delicious, wine sap. Whether you have a bushel of red apples, yellow apples, green apples, sign in the sign language, doesn't matter what color the apple is on the outside, there's always a star where? On the inside. And it's kind of just like people. I used to perform with my African-American storyteller, Babalu Basie. He's 6'6" with dreadlocks. I fit right under his armpit. And we would tell this story. He would hold the apple up high and drop it in my hand. And then we looked, he'd take one apple to one side of the auditorium. I took this apple to the other side, held it up. And the teachers, then I said, "Bob, it's kind of like people. Look, we're all the same on the inside, but you take a bushel of red apples, there's not one that's exactly the same." So I rest my case. So then we would end with singing the song, "This Little Star of Mine." And then, of course, when I told this to a deaf boy and he helped me. He illustrated it. I can't show it to you now, but here's a book we made together called Little Red House. And I gave him the words and he wrote it down. I wrote them out and I gave him the speech cartoon bubbles and he illustrated every single page. And it just a remarkable piece of how you take a story and teach deaf children to write. This was how we did it. But the interesting thing is, this boy, Michael Guzman, taught me the real meaning of that story because I gave him a page for every sequence of the story. But I forgot to leave a page for when the apple fell down on the ground. And so he added something to it. He drew a picture of a mother at a table, and he just, he was a very good artist, of mother cutting and working at a table, and he is showing the mother and running in and holding the apple, and the mother was making a spatula, she was making apple pie. He figured out to himself, why would that mother want a little red apple? Why would she want that apple? He figured, well, she probably wanted to make a pie, so that he did. But then the last page, he drew at the side of the house, the open window in the kitchen. You see the mother in it, and there was a window, and the curtains are blowing, and he drew a tree, and at the floor there was the apple on the ground, and in the sky he drew a star, and he drew like a metaphysical connection of the apple with a star in the sky. So stories are wonderful tools to help children talk to us. So that's my story, The Little Red House, based on a European folk tale of some kind. That's how I tell it. Thank you for listening.
Great.
Next time you cut an apple, you'll think of Barbara.
Indeed, indeed. That was an amazing story. That was the first time I ever saw Barbara tell a story. So thank you so much for sharing that. So now you guys are blessed with my presence. I am Shoshana Simpson and I am on the board. I am on the outreach committee, and our job is to help build the community within the organization and also to do outreach as well. I've been a storyteller for 7 years now. I went to a storytelling show in Westchester, and it was Prosa Pie. So we got to not only hear stories, but actually taste pies as well. Amazing. They don't do it anymore because of COVID and stuff, but hopefully one day they bring it back. But they had a free class, and I went to learn how to tell a story, write a story, put it together, and they allowed me on their stage, and I haven't come off since. So I'm about to tell a story about a time. Do I have any people who enjoy running in the audience? You guys are runners? Yes, yes, no? All right, perfect. So 6 years ago, if you had asked me if I ran, I would have asked, why? Is someone chasing me? Because if you ever see me running, you should run too, because that means someone is chasing after me. But in June of 2016, I needed a new challenge. My workout routine was boring me, and I just wanted to, keep working out because, doctor said you have to keep healthy. And lucky for me, my friend emailed me to ask if I wanted to join him and his son in a 5K Color Vibe run. I thought, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I signed up, I paid my money, and all before my brain reminded me like, yo, we don't run. Oh my God, you're right. And I thought, how can I take this back? But I'd already told my friend I was going to do it. And also in my excitement, I'd already plastered it all over Facebook and Instagram. And you know that once you put it on social media, you can't take it back. So I was committed. So to prepare for my inaugural run, I bought the running sneakers. I downloaded the app to take me from couch to 5K. And I also bought some new running outfits because, you never know who you're going to see on the street. And I had my plan. So on my first day of training, I was going to park on the street, run across the drawbridge and into the park. So that morning, I parked on the street, I came out, I put on my headphones and my armband, and I started running. And for the first 45 seconds, it was amazing. I felt like I was running in my own movie. You know, the one where the woman's going through some type of inner turmoil and she's running out of park and there's a backdrop of water of some kind. That one. Around the 46th second, my legs started to hurt. I was huffing and puffing, and I was thinking, people do this for fun? This is awful. But still, I couldn't quit because I'm a woman of my word. And when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, even if it kills me. So to hold myself accountable, I decided that I was going to post my running status on Facebook and Instagram. I mean, because let's be honest here, if you don't post it, did it really happen? So it was amazing at first. People were encouraging. They were saying I was motivating them. They were giving me running tips. And it was great, except in those moments when I was running and I just wanted to just say, forget this. But I thought, I can't. They're counting on me. I'm an inspiration. So one day at work, I was complaining to my coworker about how I hated running. And he asked, you haven't experienced runner's high yet? I thought, runner's high? What's that? And he explained to me that runner's high is when you're running and you're going at a steady pace and you don't feel your legs and it's just euphoric. Hell no, I experienced no runner's high. But I did take his comment about running at a steady pace. And the next morning when I started running, I did go at a slower pace instead of running full throttle, which was what I was doing. So no wonder I was tired. And this time I noticed the sun rising, the swans on the lake. It was amazing. I'm not going to say euphoric. But that morning I ran my first mile ever. So come run day, I was ready. When me and my friend and his family arrived at the park, the music was blasting, people were dancing, and it was a sea of blues, pinks, purples, and oranges. Everyone was covered in colored powder. Now, as the run time started getting closer, I started getting nervous, butterflies in my stomach. And I turned to my friend and I said, please wait for me. Because him and his son, they actually enjoyed running. And I was under no delusion that I was going to be able to keep up with them. But I just wanted someone to be there to see me cross this finish line. The horn blared and a cloud of purple smoke was released. And we all started moving in a herd-like fashion. And I tried to bob and weave, get around the bodies, like, get out of my way. Finally, I was able to break free and I started running. I was going. I got to the 1.5 mile mark and I was done because I came what I set out. I came what I set out to do. So I have nothing else to prove. So my friend who had finished the run came back onto the track to find me. And he said, Shauna, come on, you're gonna finish this running. I turned to him, I said, you think you're better than me because you finished? He looked at me and he said, yep, okay. So we started running and we had light conversation to keep me distracted. And before I knew it, I crossed the finish line. I was so happy and so proud of myself that I went home and I got on Facebook Live to give my Academy Award speech. Thank you guys so much for supporting me and for being there and commenting and sharing. It just meant the world to me. And if you ever want to do something like this, you let me know and I'll support you. Signed off of Facebook Live. I took a shower and a much deserved nap. And the next morning I got up for running. I parked my car on the street. I came out, I put on my headphones, my armband, and I started running. And then I stopped because no one was chasing me. So if you ever see me running, you should run too, because that means someone is chasing after me. And there endeth my story. Thank you so much. And I'm going to pass it on to Jim. You're on mute, Jim. But you sound
Thank
amazing.
you. Got it. And I've got this big sign that says I'm still muted, but I'm not. There we go. So I'm going to tell a story that's a little different than the stories I usually tell because this is a true story. Not that happened to me, but it's a true story. But it's also a lot like the stories I tell because it happens to be Jewish. And it's timed for this time of year, which is a time of year when we're all about getting and giving forgiveness for things that either have been done to us or that we've done to others. Time to forgive each other. And this is a story about a man who was known as the Chofetz Chaim. Now that, you got to understand, people who were really great scholars got named by the books they wrote, not by their names. So this guy's actual name was Israel Meir Kagan, but he was known as the Chofetz Chaim, which is the book he wrote called Seeking Life. That's how you should always be kind to other people. And he was just known, this is a beautiful, beautiful book, for being so kind to people at every opportunity. In fact, one time it's said his house had been broken into. He lived in the late 1800s, early 1900s. His house had been broken into, and he saw the thief running away with his silver. And the police had caught the thief and started to beat him. And he ran out with a pair of candlesticks and says, wait, I said you could have everything. Take these. These are yours too. So, this is the kind of guy he was. And this story happens. He lived in Russia, and he was traveling on train to get to his next big speaking engagement. And he sat in the back of the car and he's reading his book. He was a tiny little guy, nerdy is what we would call him today. And at the other end of that same car, there's a whole bunch of big burly guys playing poker and drinking and just having a rowdy old time. And they see this little guy sitting in the back and they think, we've got an easy mark here. So the biggest guy goes over and he grabs him. He says, come play cards with us. And Chofetz Chaim says, no, not me. It's not my thing. Oh, you're too good for us. Come on and play cards. No, I don't. Come on. And he brings him over to the table. And the Chofetz Chaim says, look, I really don't play cards. I'll sit here and watch. But if you really want me to play cards, I'm not the right guy. This man lifted him by the scruff of his neck and with a big hand smacked him across the face and left this mark like you wouldn't believe. And the good news is that at that moment, the train stopped. It had arrived at the station. So everybody goes piling off the train. Here's the poor Chofetz Chaim, nursing his nearly broken jaw. And when the big guy walks off the train, he sees this huge crowd of people, and he doesn't know why. He steps off, and then he turns around, and here comes the little Chofetz Chaim off the train, and the crowd cheers because he's their guest speaker. And all of a sudden, this guy knows he hit a really important rabbi. So he's feeling a little worried. He goes right up to him and says, I'm so sorry. I hit you. Would you please forgive me? And he knew the Chofetz Chaim forgives everybody, right? And the Chofetz Chaim says, no. Now the crowd's watching this. The Chofetz Chaim, he didn't forgive him. What's going on? And the guy is stunned. And he's, look, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. No. Now you have to know, in Jewish law, if you ask somebody sincerely 3 times to forgive you and they don't, then you're forgiven. So he says, look, I really do want you to forgive me. And here you have all these witnesses around you. They've seen me apologize twice already. Please, would you please forgive me? I really am sorry for hitting you. And the Chofetz Chaim says, I can't. You can't? You didn't hit me. And the guy points to his face where his handprint is and says, "What do you mean? I didn't hit you. Yeah, I hit you." And no, you didn't hit me. You're apologizing to a famous rabbi. The guy you hit is a poor little schlub in the back of the train who doesn't mean anything to anybody. You go find him and apologize to him. It's a true story of the Chofetz Chaim. Oh, and so I then pass it on to Chris Riedel.
Unmute myself. Yes, there we go. So, it's so interesting. We didn't plan this. What were we going to tell? But I find it very interesting, the topics and the things that have come up with these 4 stories. This story is from ancient China. And back in those days, ancient China was ruled by the Mandarin classes. And the Mandarins were men. And the Mandarins wore beautiful silken embroidered robes. They carried a sword. And they went to committee meetings. They met and they discussed government and how the people were to be treated. And there was one Mandarin one day who went to his meeting and he watched the machinations that went on and the maneuvering and the backstabbing. And he couldn't tolerate it any longer. He stood up and he walked out. He went up to his carry chair. He said, "Men, I must leave this town. Take me away so that we see no people." And he got in his chair and they went. And his carriers walked and they walked and they walked and they walked until they were completely out of town. They had gone out into the country. There were no even buildings or houses around. And the Mandarin said, "Yes, let's stop. Sit down, men. Take a rest." And the Mandarin walked out into the middle of the field. And the sun was shining, the breeze was blowing. He sat down on a warm rock and just felt the breeze. And he realized how angry he was at his position. And he got agitated all over again. He pulled his sword out, grabbed a piece of his embroidered robe and sliced it off. And he threw it up in the air. And you'd think that piece of fabric would fall to the ground. But it didn't. It floated away. And the Mandarin watched that. He took his sword. He sliced off another piece of his embroidered robe and threw it in the air. And it fluttered around. They were butterflies, the first of their kind. And the Mandarin sliced off more of his robe, threw all of those beautifully colored bits into the air until the air in that field was full of those butterflies. The Mandarin's robe was in shreds, but he was pleased. He'd added something of beauty to the world. he knew he had to go back. He sheathed his sword. He, in his rags, got back in his carry chair. But his heart was easier, and he could go back to his difficult job. And I close the story with that wish for us all, that we may add something of beauty to the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Let's give a round of applause to all of our storytellers tonight. So we had just starting from the beginning. Let's see, we had Barbara Alaprantis, who started us off. Then we had Shoshana Simpson. And then we had, look at me, I'm spotlighting people and saying their names at the same time. You should be really impressed. And then we're adding Jim Brule. And finally finishing us off was Chris Riedel. Give him one more big round of applause. Yes. And if you'd like to unmute yourself, yes, go right ahead, unmute yourselves.
It was wonderful, just wonderful.
Now we also we have a few other board members who were not able to perform tonight. Denise Page is our newest board member, who is just visiting friends and doesn't have good sound quality, so she wasn't able to tell or MC tonight. But we are so appreciative of her and her work. Rona Leventhal was not able to be here to perform. We also have Lynn Schweikert, who is celebrating her birthday tonight. And then we have Linda Schuyler Ford, who did a lot of work to set this whole thing up and was called into work last minute because of COVID. So we have all of those. Those are your board members. They are here to serve you. I am your executive director. I'm also here to serve you and the board. And after this, we will be welcoming Ralph to do his legendary story swap. Now, what makes it legendary, some of you are asking? I don't know. I can't answer that question. I have to stick around and find out. And if you don't know why it's legendary, then you need to stick around and find out too. We've got a little bit of time before we need to get started. So you can take a break. You can step away. And
we lost Katie there.
What was that?
I was going to say, can I sing us off with a
Close
wonderful
up there for a second, Katie.
Side by Side?
Absolutely. Here, we'll remove some other spotlights, and we will get you as the only person.
So, and everybody just know that. Clap 10 times. Wake up your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right. Now, I don't know about any of you, but I don't have a lot of money. This is the sign for money. Money. Coins. I'm not. So you would say that I'm poor? No. But the sign I use for poor, because the sign is side by side or together. So nothing money, but we say, oh, we ain't got a barrel of money. I'm not going to show you all those signs. I have to show you. Nothing money. Oh, do it with me. Oh, we ain't got a barrel of money. But you got to look like you said. If you say, oh, we ain't, you're laughing. No. Okay, from the top. Oh, we ain't got a barrel of money. Now this is the sign for many. Maybe
we're
ragged. Ragged. The sign for ragged, poor. Okay, maybe we're ragged and funny. This is an H, and tap your nose, funny. One more time.
Funny.
We're going to start from the beginning and repeat it. That's how you're going to learn it. Oh, we
ain't got a lot of
money. Maybe we're ragged and funny. I don't know why that's funny, but now take the V and crook your and travel. We'll travel along, singing a song, side by side. Now, not side. I used to go side by side when my granddaughter said it doesn't really mean, it means together. So together. So one more time from the beginning. Oh, we ain't got a barrel of money. Maybe we're ragged and funny, but we'll travel
along,
singing a
sing
song side
side
by
by side.
side. We're all in this together, folks. It was a wonderful storyboard concert. Thank you, everybody, for your stories.